To remain updated with the latest business news, click on the bell icon.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today. I'm Sakshi Batra and with me I have somebody very, very special to talk about NFTs, cryptos and blockchain. Something that you may not have heard from him before this on Business Today platform. You have Nikhil Chinapa right here with us. You've seen him as an anchor, host, RJ, a musician. So many hats you've done before. But what got you into the virtual digital asset space, Nikhil?
Sakshi, the thing is, I've always been very curious about technology and how technology impacts our lives and how we interact with technology.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that blockchain technology and all the different uses of it are our future in many different ways. I'm not saying they're going to take over the world and there'll be nothing else. And I think there's a space for Web 2 technology to exist and many different use cases for Web 2 as well. But I really do believe that Web 3 is going to be the future.
Okay, but do you see millennials who follow you so much and who have been following you in everything that you've been doing so far? You influenced millennials so many times in the past, but in the way of investing in NFTs or in cryptos and blockchain, do you think there is enough scope for investors, millennial investors to actually grow in this space?
Investing is just the tip of the iceberg. And let me explain to you why. I believe, when I say the future is Web3, I believe that we all are separate identities. You're Sakshi, I'm Nikhil. We recognize each other as that. You have a Twitter profile, a Facebook profile, an Instagram profile. You have a phone number, an email ID. These are all various identities of you.
Right.
Okay? Now imagine all these identities reside in one wallet, which means the way you talk to each other, to your friends, it's in that wallet. The things that you own, in that wallet. The number of times your car has been serviced, in that wallet. Your degree and all your work experiences in your life, in that wallet. That wallet becomes your identity. That wallet is on Web3. So every time you need to communicate with someone or you need to show trust saying, hey, I'm a chef. I'm a really good chef. Look at all these places that I've worked in. All in your wallet. It becomes a way to talk to each other, to establish trust without having trust. And I honestly believe that is the future. So everything that you do in that, investment will be a part of that. NFTs will be a part of that. Your identity will be a part of that. And you are essentially a walking, talking, breathing, Pani Puri loving wallet.
Absolutely. But what about the risks of whether it is a legal space or an illegal space? Because there is still so much of a grey area in India, especially with the government, the policy makers still debating about as to how do we deal with this new emerging technology?
Well, there's two aspects to it. The government needs to deal with technology and the aspects of that technology, and we need to deal with government. So the government will do what it does, and then we have to wait for what the government does and then decide what we need to do after that. But eventually, and I say this with a lot of respect, we live in a land where we must respect the law of the land, regardless of where you live. You live in America, respect the law of the land. You live in Dubai, respect the law of the land. Live in India, respect the law of the land. And we trust our elected representatives to make those laws. And then whatever those laws are, for better or for worse, we must live according to those laws.
But how optimistic are you about the future of cryptocurrencies and NFTs in India?
Currently, where we are right now, which is March 2022, I'm a little bit worried about the number of people choosing to use their skills in developing technology and trying to set up base outside of the country because there's still so much of uncertainty around the regulatory framework that exists in India around emerging technology. And I don't just mean cryptocurrency, I mean all emerging technology. If there was better clarity about how the government's going to deal with emerging technology, and I think a lot of people who are coming up with these great ideas and great solutions for different use cases would choose to set up those businesses in India rather than us over time applauding CEOs of companies whose bases are set up in New York and LA of Indian origin.
Yeah, so do you fear a brain drain of sorts and a talent outflow because of the lack of clarity of regulation?
There's no point fearing it. It's happening. What are we going to do about it?
Absolutely.
We have to confront the reality of it rather than just be afraid of it. It is happening. People are going to choose to set up businesses or set up their lives in places that are more conducive to the work that they do and the kind of lifestyle they want to lead. So,
but in your opinion, I want to ask, say for example, how do you see India ideally emerging as a country like Dubai, which has friendly policies with respect to these new emerging technologies, or an El Salvador, or these smaller nations like Malaysia, which is now thinking of making cryptocurrencies a legal tender? Where do you see India emerging as and, taking shape?
Well, India is my country and I love it. And I'm not the one making policy. All of these countries have their own challenges, have their own pros and cons. And similarly, so do we. We have an extremely large population. There are probably more things, there are probably aspects of running a government in India or living in India that are more important than, let's say, cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And I trust our government to deal with those issues.
Yeah.
So, be patient. Maybe things will not happen in my lifetime. That's okay. Not everything's happened in my lifetime.
Absolutely. But you got onto this trend very, very early on. You were one of the first ones to recognize the potential that perhaps this entire space has. Now, millennials are looking at this as a potential growth opportunity in terms of making money. Do you see this space only that investors should look at? That, okay, I want to get rich, let me invest in cryptos or in NFT.
Look, that is a genuine worry.
Yeah.
I believe there's a desperate need for education, financial education, and crypto education as well. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yeah.
Most get-rich-quick schemes tend to be scams. Okay, if you study the market, you study the use cases, you study the applications of whether you're buying an Apple stock or whether you're buying Bitcoin or Ethereum,
Yes.
if you study it and you understand the risks involved or what kind of development is happening in that project or in that company, then you can choose whether you want to put 5 rupees over here or you want to put the 5 rupees somewhere else. That education is really important. But if you look at somebody else who says, hey man, I put 5 rupees in and look, I've got 500 rupees right now, and you say, great, I'll put my 1,000 rupees in there's a pretty good chance you're going to lose that money.
Yes.
There's a pretty good chance that's going to happen.
You're right, but financial advisors in India are still very skeptical of telling people, at least retail investors, to get into this. Perhaps they're doing it for bigger companies who have massive money and massive funds and take that risk in cryptos and everything, but not for retail investors. So I want to understand from you, what would be your message to them who say that perhaps cryptos and NFTs don't have any fundamentals to back, just like how stock markets do?
Cryptos do have fundamentals.
Okay.
That's a much longer conversation.
Yeah.
Not all cryptos do, but many, many of them do. Okay. I'd like to say that's similar to financial advisors who say, do an SIP. Don't try and time the market, because if you look at what the stock market's done for the past 20 or 30 years,
Yeah.
you'll see there's been steady growth over that time. So if you keep putting in a certain amount of money every month or every 2 months, you're going to see that money grow.
Okay.
If you're going to apply that to let's just say Bitcoin, okay, just Bitcoin. Bitcoin has had a near perfect growth line over the past trajectory. That was the word I was looking for. Bitcoin has had a near perfect trajectory over the past 10 or 11 years, where the low of the year has always been higher than the previous year, except for 1 year. That's a great line. The low of Bitcoin's low every year has been higher than its previous year's low, except for 1 year. So
it is growing.
It is growing, right? So if you apply to Bitcoin, you can always say, put in money into Bitcoin in a systematic way, and over time you will see returns. But if you want to make money over the next 2 or 3 months, then that's a risk. That's like any kind of financial risk that you would. I'm not going to say gambling, but even because there's been too many comparisons to,
Yes.
But yeah.
Absolutely. What do you have to say about the taxation aspect that India has so far talked about, that the 30% taxation on cryptos with a 1% TDS? Some are thinking of putting it under the GST gamut as well. So help me understand, will taxation on these new emerging technologies prohibit people from getting to it, or perhaps be an enabler of getting people into it?
Look, I believe that as long as the tax is easy to compute and execute, whatever the tax is, whether it's 1%, 10%, 30% or 50%, that is it. Law of the land, like I mentioned earlier on. You've got to live by the law of the land. What I find a bit concerning is not being able to offset the losses of one coin against the profits of another coin,
Yes.
which is something that's emerged recently.
Yes.
And I think that may put a lot of people off investing in crypto. But maybe that was the intention all along, to get people to not invest in crypto without planning it outright. So again, like I said, the government has to do what they have to do, and we, the public, have to sort of follow.
Absolutely. On NFTs, could you help me understand, what explains the massive money that, a selfie or a pizza or anything that really commands at this point in time, and this massive flow of money coming in for just a small token, a digital token? How do you explain that?
Community.
Okay.
It's one word. If you have an active community that believes in something, let's say we have a community that believes in coasters, and there are only 10 of these coasters, and we're all crazy about coasters, right? And if there's only 10 of these coasters and there's 100 people in the coaster community, then suddenly this coaster is very valuable. Ooh, there's only 10 of these. But if you're into forks and knives, then this coaster is worthless.
Yeah.
There's no point in the coaster. So the community around that project is what drives interest in that project, which means whenever you're buying in an NFT, if you're a speculator and you're going, oh, I actually like forks and knives, but I know there's only 10 coasters, so I'll buy that coaster because then I can sell it for 5 times its value. You better know that that coaster community is active and engaged.
Yeah.
And sometimes those communities can be faked.
Oh.
So they keep saying, join the Discord community, but are there really 20,000 people in the Discord community? Or are there just 2,000 people? And there's 18,000 bots. We don't know. So do your own research and figure out what you're getting into. Because yes, you can make a lot of money, but chances are, if you don't know what you're doing, the chances are you will lose all your money rather than making any.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you about music NFTs as well, because you are a musician yourself. You've brought in so much of culture of music in India. Help me understand, is music NFT still just a fad, or will it be real of value going forward from here as well for somebody who wants to really get into it?
Talking about music NFTs is like talking about electricity and asking me whether electricity is going to be a fad. It's how you use the music NFT that makes it exciting and interesting, rather than just the fact that it is a music NFT, right? The example that I like to give people is the Beatles catalog, okay? There's Beatles fans all across the world. And let's assume the song Hey Jude earns royalties in many different ways through streaming or syndication or sync rights of $1 million a year, okay? Now, what the person who owns, or the company that owns that song would do is retain 51% of the ownership, which means I don't lose control of the song, but fractionalize 49% into many NFTs.
Okay.
As a Beatles fan, regardless of whether I earned any money from that song, I would love to own a piece of Hey Jude. Just as, hey, I'm one of the 100,000 people that owns a piece of Hey Jude. But for those 100,000 people as well, you would earn fractional royalties of that song. Now you can apply that to music catalogs, to songs, to artists, to record labels, and in many different ways, right? This is just one use case of a music NFT.
Yeah.
You're only bound by the limits of your own imagination when it comes to how NFTs can be used. They're not just collectibles. The utility of NFTs is what's actually the bulk of the iceberg. The collectible market is just the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely. You know, you joined us as the co-founder of Fox.tv. I wanted to understand a little bit what all does it do, and
nothing right now.
Okay.
It was a conversation that I had with somebody and I mentioned it, and then everybody started talking about it. But the idea of, it's actually 0x.tv. The idea of 0x.tv is to talk about crypto projects and to increase the level of crypto education and awareness amongst Indians.
Okay.
So we're going to set out to do a bunch of explainer videos and talk about different aspects of crypto, NFTs, blockchain technology, so it becomes easier for people to understand it and then to make informed choices about projects that they want to be involved in.
When do we see the demo or the first pilot going on?
I think in about 6 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Chinapa. It's been great to have this conversation with you, and hope to have you on many more occasions to understand more about cryptos and NFTs, which most of our viewers are very, very interested in, who follow you as well.
I'd love to. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.